Barton Dunant presents Planning for Crisis Communications. Hello and welcome to the first of a series of 5 workshops associated with creating a crisis communications team at your organization. These workshops are designed for any type of organization, government, non-governmental, that is nonprofit, and for-profit and/or private organizations. It doesn't matter what type of organization you are part of, everyone is subject to the needs for crisis communications. Every one of these groups can be impacted by a disaster, and the 3 disaster phases of before, during, and after. Sometimes disasters impact only one organization, and most times they impact multiple organizations at the same time. These workshops are built upon a concept called POETE, which stands for Planning, Organization, Equipping, Training, and Exercising. So this first one is the planning for crisis communications, what your team needs to do before, during, and after any incident or disaster. What exactly is crisis communications? It's a communications made by organizations, sometimes in collaboration and cooperation with others, representing that organization in response to an emergency. Crisis communications is not solely for emergency response organizations. It's for every organization to provide information to the public and its stakeholders, constituent groups, about how the disaster is impacting the organization and what the organization is doing, even if it's just the continuity of operations. There are also times when the crisis communication team needs to prepare reactive messaging that may never be used. If it is needed, chances are that that type of crisis messaging material cannot be quickly designed or approved during the actual crisis itself. Think about crisis communications in the same way we think about first aid, with the steps in order of check the scene for safety, have someone call 911, and then care for the injured. For crisis communications, you need to check the intelligence or information, also known as situational awareness. You need to gather the facts first. Call for assistance. Even if you do not need it now, you will want to have help ready in case something changes. Then communicate your message to the public and your constituent group stakeholders. There were a number of training courses, classes, elements, etc. available on crisis communications, some of which we will highlight in the 4th workshop in this series, the one on training. We are leading with the training from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC's Crisis and Emergency Risk Communication, or the CIRC program. They highlight 6 elements that your communications should do. Be first. You want the information about your organization to come from your group, not a third party. It might be part of a larger group of communications, like from a government lead public information officer, or just a moment later shared via third-party service, for example, a radio station repeating snow days, school closures. But the official word comes from the school first. Not everyone gets the information from the same sources. Be right. Part of what we described in the check the intelligence situational awareness is where there is uncertainty, you do not want to repeat or solidify rumors or innuendo. Stay in your lane and take the time to get it right the first time. Be credible. Speak with authority and purpose. Transparency is helpful as well. Working with partners on collaborative communications helps with the credibility as well. Express empathy for the public, your own workforce, partners, etc. If the disaster hurt people, even if it had no possible connection to your organization, lead with that. If 3 people were killed during a tornado, your plumbing business should not lead with a press release of, "We're ready to help you rebuild your homes." Promote action. Encourage people to do safer things for themselves and their families. Ask for your staff to check in with supervisors to make sure they're okay and if they need help. Show respect for the victims, first responders, your partners, and stakeholders. Disasters and emergencies are very stressful times. There's no need to be disrespectful or indifferent to others. This misstep will become the story and a crisis to your organization itself. Here's how the pieces all fit together under the POETE structure. In this workshop, we're covering planning. The other 4 workshops will cover organization, how to staff this role, including backups and support staff, equipment needed for these missions, training needed, and the concept of exercising these planning, organization, equipment, and training components via a stair-stepped approach of increasing capability and complexity. Here are some acronyms and short terms you may see in this workshop. If we missed any, or if there are any terms or phrases that we use that are different or difficult to understand, please contact us directly at info@bartondunant.com and note the workshop name and number. In the design of the communications team overall POETE, there are planning objectives and strategic priorities. We believe these are some of the important elements of planning before, during, and after an emergency or disaster. There are undoubtedly other elements as well. If you think of any that are generic to any organization, please drop us a line at info@bartondunant.com so we can improve this workshop. Hopefully by now you have a better understanding of how crisis communications is different from marketing or normal day-to-day corporate/organizational communications. It may be conducted by the same individuals, but the timing is very different, as are the stressors and outside impacts to your organization. We will cover a few more specific/tactical actions organized into 3 modules and provide you with an opportunity to practice creating some elements of crisis communications yourself. The preparedness phase is the longest. It's also the phase you reset to after an incident occurs. Now is the time to take the training, do the exercises, and to build templates to cover a number of scenarios that could occur. Disasters can be categorized into 3 distinct groupings. Natural and human-made disasters. These are the storms, power outages, earthquakes, cyber attacks. All of these and more fall into this category, and they usually impact the public, including your workforce, via an impact to your facility. Your crisis communications messages and messaging needs to say how your organization is impacted and what you're doing to respond to it, recover from it, mitigate against the adverse impacts. There can also be disasters that the public may not see, such as product and process disasters. Included in this are also those disasters impacting your organization only, such as a product recall. These disasters can also have reputational risks and can threaten your income revenue immediately and on a longer-term basis as well. Finally, there's a category called fictitious disasters. These are the false stories about your organization or its leaders, for example, that just do not seem to go away and sometimes come back up when the organization makes the news. For some organizations, these fictitious disasters rise back in the public eye when the organization experiences a success elsewhere. They can be just as devastating externally and internally as a real disaster. The true story of how your organization mismanaged a crisis 10 years ago is not a fictitious disaster, even if it is referred again now by the media during this current crisis. Now is the time to prepare the reactive messaging for that prior disaster so you're more ready to show the public how things have changed. You will need to continuously build and maintain their trust. Do not forget the customized messages, materials needed for your constituent groups, stakeholders, etc. Also, now is the time to identify other languages needed, build templates in those other languages, and identify backup staff who can translate on the fly if needed. Include those resources and exercises where you do the call downs to see who can support the crisis communications team. Now is also the time to start thinking about who would implement these templates and create customized, unique messages during the incident response, and what equipment, training, exercising do they need. The crisis communications aspect of any incident response is very people heavy, meaning it is mostly done with staff rather than performed with specific locations, equipment, or supplies. Now it's your turn to practice. Please draft a copy of the talking points, social media posts. You decide which platform to use, but please just draft the message wording. Do not actually go to that platform during this workshop. We do not want any accidental sends of exercise material. The scenario is a severe storm forecast in the next 24 hours, for which management has decided now to close the office for the next 24 hours. Depending upon how you are conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with a facilitator, or you can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA, lowercase EPA, to record your practice material in a reply to that post. All of the modules within this workshop units use the same blog post, which is linked to specific sections for you to use, based on the workshop and module that you're in. Select the Crisis Communication Workshop section under the Planning and Module 1. This practice area is for the one called, in the link called Planning Module 1, AWR PC1. Module 2. The response phase has its own elements to consider. Now is the time to not only utilize the preparedness work done beforehand, but also plan for the expansion of the crisis communications team, with additional subject matter experts, translators, even backup and relief staff. This crisis could require 24-hour-a-day response by the team. You need to plan for more people. It can also be an opportunity to train new team members or prospective ones. During the response to the crisis, continue to document the time and resources being used. This is important for human resources, paid time off calculations, possibly even submission to the government for reimbursement cost share. This is also the time to capture new material created. It may be useful for future scenarios. Capture also the roadblocks and challenges your team is facing, and think of both the quick fixes and the longer-term improvements needed, and hopefully will be requested by your management team for the next time. Now it's your turn again to practice. Please draft a copy of the talking points and social media posts. Again, you decide what platform format to use, but again, please just draft the text of the messages. Do not actually go to that platform during this workshop. We do not want any accidental sends of exercise material. The scenario is now that the severe storm actually damaged your office facility and the building will be inaccessible for the next 6 months. Depending upon how you are conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with your facilitator. You can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA to record your practice material in a reply to that post. Select the Crisis Communications Workshop section under Planning and now pick Module 2. The planning area for this one is a link called Planning Module 2 AWR PC1. Module 3. Here's where you need to build out additional communications templates. This is where you have the alternate locations, we have thank yous and other partner acknowledgments. This is also where you want to highlight your mission successes. You may not be able to make these messages, or there may not be an opportunity, but you should craft them and be ready to have them ready. Also begin the process of documenting the work that's been performed. We call these things after action reporting and improvement planning, as well as there are anniversary event plannings. That's possible if the incident or crisis is so devastating, it might require an anniversary to be held. A lot of this is done for health and mental health reasons, but the community may require it, and you need to be ready for those type of communications. Final chance to practice for this workshop. Please draft a copy of talking points and social media posts. Again, one more time, you decide which platform, but as before, please just make the messages. Do not actually go to that platform during this workshop. We do not want any accidental sends of exercise material. The scenario is now to prepare material describing the alternate location to be used instead of your damaged facility. Also prepare the reopening announcement in advance. If you want to and have time, also build an example of an anniversary notice or release, which highlights the positive work of your organization during this storm, to be used at a future anniversary event or publications. Depending upon how you're conducting this workshop, you can log your responses with your facilitator, or you can use our Barton Dunant blog post at blog.bartondunant.com/EPA to record your practice material and reply to that post. Select the Crisis Communications Workshop section under Planning, and then Module 3. This practice area for this one is the link called Planning Module 3, AWR PC1. Congratulations, you now completed this first workshop. We hope you'll take the next one in the series, the organization one, which is Organization for Crisis Communication Workshop number 2. Once your team has completed the series of 5 workshops, please consider conducting a tabletop exercise with your team and then evaluate the results for modification to the POETA process. Then work your way towards a functional exercise and others. Never stop learning something new and practice as much as you can.